Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm just going to ask, I don't want to sound grumpy, but when we have council meetings, we ask that people not clap, respond, etc. It's a way for us to be able to speak up here, hear from folks when it is their time to talk. In this instance, this is a consent item, but really appreciate that everybody's here and find that Boise's at our best when we're respectful to each other. And in a room like this, that's by silence. So I think that's just the easiest way to say it, so we can move on, continue on with our meeting. Appreciate seeing everybody here tonight. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and we start our meeting with an invocation, which we observe by a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All righty, clerk, will you please call the roll?
Corliss.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Morales.
Here.
Nash.
Here.
Stead.
Here.
Willits. Here. All present.
And next up, we've got some minutes for approval.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes for the meeting on April 29th, 2025.
Second. We have a motion and a second, clerk.
Morales.
Yes.
Nash.
Yes.
Stead.
Yes.
Willits. Yes. Corliss.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
And now we have under special business some appointments. Is Cameron LaFrenz here? We are reappointing Cameron as the Student Commissioner for the Arts and History Commission for another term, this one ending June 30th, 2026.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent for the reappointment of Cameron LaFrenz to the Arts and History Commission student seat for a one-year term ending June 30th, 2026.
Without objection. Cameron, if you're watching or watching this later, really appreciate your service. So excited to see that you wanted to come back to the commission one more year. So thanks for joining us. And next up, I'm proposing that we appoint Josh Hurwitz to the Boise City Ethics Commission for a four-year term ending February 29. I don't think that Josh could make it, but just want to see if Josh is here. Nope, he's not.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent for the appointment of Josh Hurwitz to the Boise City Ethics Commission for a four-year term ending February 2029.
Without objection. And also thank you, Josh, for your willingness to serve in this capacity. Really appreciate it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Yeah, if I could, our council is probably used to me giving this speech at this point, but these positions are volunteer positions, and they're people like you from the community who try to figure out how they can have a role in helping us as a government, helping us as a community. This first position, I think, is especially great because it's a student seat. And we have several commissions that have student seats, and that means that younger folks can get involved in our decision-making at the city. And it helps inform the decisions that we make on council, which I think is incredible because we're all a little bit older than students up here. And it's nice to make sure that when we are making decisions that we have the perspective of somebody who's growing up here and is going to be living here for generations to come. So super excited about the reappointment there. And then for Josh as well on the Boise City Ethics Commission. Again, these are volunteer positions. People don't have to do this, but they choose to do this and they make the city and the community stronger because of it. So if they are watching or if they ever do hear this, thank you to them and thank you for all the folks that serve on these commissions.
And next up, excuse me, sorry. Next up, we have the consent agenda.
So, Madam Mayor, just to kind of give some education to the audience on this. Next, we have the
Don't seem very loud.
just to give a little education to folks here. I know you touched on it briefly, but we next have the consent agenda, which is a number of resolutions we consider. These are anything from contracts to agreements with other jurisdictions to this flag resolution. Just so people aren't confused, what we'll do is I'll pull this flag resolution RES 21625 from the consent agenda for separate consideration so that we can vote on that separately. And then I'd like to consider the consent agenda and then we'll move approval of the resolution. So I'd ask unanimous consent that we remove RES 21625 from the consent agenda for separate consideration.
Without objection. Right.
Madam Mayor, I remove approval of the rest of the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
Madam Mayor, I'll be voting no because we are approving travel that's already occurred. So I will be voting no.
Okay. Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willett,
No.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
All right, Madam Mayor, I move approval of RES 216-25.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. Oh, okay, great.
No.
Oh, Madam Mayor, I'll kick it off.
Sure.
I'm going to obviously be supporting the motion. I second it. Over the past few days, I've received a good number of messages regarding the flags that fly at City Hall, and I want to take a moment to acknowledge that feedback and also offer some important clarification. We're not replacing the city flag with a pride flag. This action is a matter of legal compliance, a necessary step as I see it to ensure that we align with a state law regarding flag displays on public buildings. In essence, nothing is changing about our values or our traditions that we've honored for more than a decade. We will simply be formalizing the practices that have long been a part of our city's identity. In recent years, flags have become a symbol for a broad array of causes and communities. Among them, the pride flag stands out, not just for what it represents, but for the powerful conversations that it inspires. It is a symbol of visibility, acceptance, and dignity of our LGBTQ community. And it is a reflection of our city's heart, inclusive, compassionate, and committed to the well-being of all of our residents. The pride flag represents our neighbors, our family members, our friends, and our colleagues. These individuals contribute daily to the fabric of our city. Removing the flag now, after years of flying it proudly, would not be a neutral act. It would signal a retreat from values we've long upheld and send a disheartening message to those who have found affirmation and belonging through its presence at City Hall. Flying the pride flag is more than a gesture. It's an affirmation of who we are. It reflects our ongoing commitment to equity, diversity, and unity. Recognizing one group does not diminish others. On the contrary, it strengthens the whole by ensuring every resident knows that they are seen, valued, and supported. Let us stand firm in our shared commitment to inclusion. Let us remain united because unity is and always will be our greatest strength as Boiseans.
Madam Mayor. First, a few words to share here. And I think the first is this is a pretty straightforward resolution. It explains what qualifies as an official flag. And it really shouldn't be anybody surprise to anybody where I stand on this. I'm going to share a couple of stories anyway. Before I was on council, I was appointed to a task force with the previous mayor, Mayor Beater, and it was his LIVE task force. And he had a goal of making Boise the most livable city in the country. And during one of these meetings, we were discussing additional steps that we could take to make Boise a more livable community. And I remember in this meeting, there was a local business owner who had been in town for a couple of years, and he shared a story. And the story was he was thinking about moving his business to Boise and hundreds of jobs that would come for Idahoans that came with it. And while they were thinking about making this transition to my hometown, to the city of Boise, there was some apprehension. They had been watching the state legislature and they'd seen some pretty bad bills getting passed that were violations of human rights. And some of his employees and he himself had some concerns about moving to Boise. People were afraid of what that might mean for their kids, would their rights be stood up for, and some apprehension. They were thinking about going somewhere else. So they came and they did a site visit to Boise. And one of the first things that they noticed when they came here, and this was at least 10 years ago, was that there was a pride flag flying at City Hall. And then later they took a trip to the Boise foothills. And when they were driving down Harrison Boulevard, they saw the street lined with pride flags. And those two things were the decisions that made them decide that this is a city where we want to move to. This is a city that aligns with the values of the people who work for us, the people that we want to recruit, and the people that we know live in Boise already and that we don't want to leave. While we were having this discussion, someone from the Chamber of Commerce spoke up and said that this was one of the #1 concerns that they were hearing from other businesses and future businesses that were considering moving to Boise. And at this meeting, I really realized two things for the very first time. And one was the statewide economic and emotional damage that comes from making individuals and families feel unsafe and unwelcome. And the second thing was the city's ability to be a beacon of hope, and the city's ability to counter that narrative, to share its values of being a welcoming place where it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your family looks like. This is a city that's going to stand up for you, it's going to stand up for your rights, and it's going to stand up for your future. Not too long after that, I went to a scholarship ceremony. And I met this just absolutely brilliant 4.0 senior from a rural city in Idaho. And they were so excited about this scholarship to Boise State University. And I went up to them afterward and I asked them why they were so excited. And they said, since they could remember, they had always wanted to live in Boise. They said they had spent most of their life hiding who they really were, getting picked on the playground for being different. And when they came to Boise for the first time, this is what they noticed. They noticed a pride flag on City Hall steps. They noticed businesses with pride flags in their windows. They noticed bumper stickers on cars, pride bumper stickers. And they knew that this was a place where they could feel safe and a place where they would not be afraid to be. And that has stuck with me for a long time before I was on council of what this city stood for, and what the flag the city was flying stood for as well. Since I've been on council, two of my best friends had a pride flag burned down on the outside of their house. A gay couple, one of them was out of town, and while the other one was sleeping, somebody lit their pride flag on fire on their house, a wood house, while they were sleeping. The next morning they woke up, I came over and there were burn scars on the house. The flag was in ashes on the ground. And the very first thing that they did was they got another pride flag and they put it up that morning, because they knew that if they didn't stand up, that if other people didn't stand up, who was going to stand up? Who's going to stand up for these kids, like this kid that received the scholarship, for kids who maybe didn't feel welcome, and for kids who just wanted to be who they really were. So this is a pretty easy resolution for me to support, because I know what it means to me. I know what it means to my family. I know what it means to my friends. I know what it means to so many people in here. There are so many things that I love about our city. And I love that when I walk up to City Hall steps or ride up to City Hall steps, as I often do, I see an American flag, a country that I love. I see an Idaho flag, a state that I grew up in and a state that I love. I see a Boise flag, a city again that I grew up in, and it embodies everything and has inspired me to run for council and to serve alongside and collaborate with so many of you. And I see a pride flag that stands against hate, a pride flag that makes people feel welcome, that makes people feel safe. And so this is something that makes sense to me. Yep.
I'm going to ask.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask that this is time for council deliberation.
One of the things I love about the city of Boise is that people have different perspectives. They view things in different ways. But I know, as a 42-year-old heterosexual male, that I've never had to go anywhere and feel unsafe, that I've never woken up in the morning and worried about a law passed at the State House that took away my rights, that made it more dangerous for me to live in my community. I've never had to feel that before. I've always felt welcome in my community, and I always will, and you always will as well. So I think that this resolution is going to pass, and I'm excited to show up to work tomorrow to continue doing my job. And I think that everybody here, no matter where they stand on this issue, are going to wake up tomorrow and they're going to find that this is a city that is amazing. It's a city where you can feel safe. It's a city where you can feel supported, and that does not change. That flag has been flying here for 10 years, and that's not going to change today. It's not going to change tomorrow. This is always going to be a city that is safe and welcoming and amazing and tries to take care of every single person that lives in it. So I'll be voting yes.
I'm again, please, this is a council meeting. We have been receiving a lot of comments from the community. This is the time for council members to have a discussion. I'm glad that you're here to watch, but I ask that you watch.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, thank you so much for this opportunity to talk with my fellow council members. I'll be supporting this motion for a lot of reasons. You know, it's interesting that we have folks that are, calling this divisive, that certain things cannot coexist. And when I think about those that this flag supports, I think of a group of community members, friends, family, neighbors who are marginalized. They have less rights than others in this state. I think about my faith, my church, who actually helped broker a compromise in the state of Utah that's made up a little like our state here in Idaho, that actually provided members of this community, this marginalized community, with anti-discrimination statutes, protections to be able to maintain their jobs and their homes for their personal freedoms, their personal choices. And our state has not done that. And this has been a long time down there that they've had this. And instead we focus on divisive things like legislation that targets the flag. I would encourage our legislators that want to help diffuse and to help bring people together to consider the mutually beneficial things that we can do to provide these rights and freedoms to our family members, our neighbors, and our friends. And so when I think about divisiveness, I just don't see these polar opposite sides. I can think of specific numerous members of my faith community that are also represented by this flag. And I think that's really important. And for those that maybe don't have those relationships, I'd encourage you to seek out those opportunities to get to know your neighbors more. I'm grateful for all of you that came out tonight. I'm grateful for those that provided feedback, both for and against. I got a lot of respectful messages from both. And I can appreciate that there are going to be people that may not agree with this proclamation, but this proclamation allows us to fly this flag legally as the state statute was written. And so if you have a problem with that, you may need to take that up with the legislature. But I appreciate those that are here to be able to
I'm
get
gonna,
their
again,
voices out.
please let the council member finish his
Yeah.
remarks.
And it's okay. I appreciate all of you that have been able to respectfully engage on this issue. Thank you.
Madam Mayor. If you asked me a year ago what would be a topic of conversation in 2025 for months on end, I don't think any of us would say the flag. To be clear, the city has been flying the pride flag, supporting our LGBTQ plus community for over 10 years with very little fuss. It wasn't until House Bill 96 was enacted that spurred this divisive discussion within the city and has placed a lot of strain on resources, both within the city and at the county. I've received a lot of public comment on the flag, most of which was respectful and overwhelmingly was in support of human rights and support of love for all our residents. The pride flag to me represents the diversity and resilience of our LGBTQ plus community and serves as a beacon of acceptance and solidarity. By officially adopting the flag, the message is that discrimination on any level has no place in our city and that every individual is valued and supported. The city of Boise has longstanding tradition of upholding principles of inclusivity and non-discrimination. House Bill 96 isn't policy, it's an attempt at censorship and discrimination. Our flag stands for people, not politics. The pride flag is a symbol of belonging, and in Boise, everyone deserves to belong. And I'll be voting for the resolution tonight.
We've got a couple more people that need to speak, so I'm gonna keep going through the line. Excuse
Madam
me,
Mayor.
ma'am. Please. Okay, we're gonna take a couple minute recess, so that we can come back. Yeah. And I'm gonna have to ask actually during this recess that if people are disrupting, they'll be ushered out into the lobby. Yeah, we're gonna leave for a minute.
15th when we have the budget. I would love to hear from you then. Sometimes it's very lonely here. We love to hear from you, especially during that public comment time. I've given a lot of thought about what to say tonight. And I hope that people will hear my heart, even if you disagree with me. So I want to give a little history lesson. You know, a month ago to the day, City Hall scrapped the new flag designs. And there were lots of conversations about it. You know, there was a public survey. There was even a winner, a cash prize if you design the winning design. Months of process, lots of surveys, lots of talk, lots of excitement, lots of emails. I thought I got a lot of emails then. No, I did not. And today's discussion, buried in the consent agenda, press release out. You know, there's no online survey. There's no months of process. There's no public comment, just a resolution to declare that the city is going to have 3 official flags. And I suspect this will pass. And there'll be people in this room that will cheer and people who will be furious. And I guess I would ask, to what end? I suspect the legislature will come in and it will slap a huge fine on the city of Boise, and Boiseans will have to pay it. And that will limit what we can spend on things that we have control over, like police and fire and libraries and parks and all the things that make Boise what it is today. And it'll likely end up in court. And like several city hall decisions, it will cost the taxpayers. And there won't be an opportunity for compromise. And that makes me sad. I know that people who identify with this flag want to be seen. I know that. I want you to know that I see you, even if I disagree with having this be an official flag. I want that noted. I really want you to hear my heart on this. I was elected to uphold the laws, well, to make laws and uphold them. And believe me, there's lots of laws that get passed that I don't like, but I have to follow them because that's our system. And we have to choose to live within the system or change the system. My constituents were very clear a month ago. They did not want a change to the flag. They wanted the Boise flag and the Boise flag only. And that hasn't changed in the last month. So I will be voting no on this.
All right, please. I appreciate the attention that was given Councilmember Willits in her remarks. Council President.
Madam Mayor, thank you. And thank you for council. And I appreciate Councilmember Willits' comments. And she's a great example of disagreeing respectfully. And I appreciate her friendship and her work on this council. I'm going to take a chance, get a little personal, and hope I can trust you all. About 15 years ago, I was recently married, and I had a secret. And in retrospect, the secret was very small and dumb. But when you're young and 20, and it felt very big and it felt very weighty. And sometimes I would drive home. I had a long commute along the highway, and I would just wonder, like, what if another car just hit me and I wouldn't have to talk about this? I wouldn't have to bring this up with my family, and I wouldn't have to deal with the consequences of what I felt were a pretty big deal. And it was a really hard time in my life. Eventually got out of it with great support from my lovely wife. And I'm not gay, but there are so many folks that live lives of quiet desperation every single day in our community who carry with them a secret. And it's a secret that they think if they tell an employer, they lose their job. They think if they tell a landlord, they lose their house. They think if they tell a parent that they're going to lose a strong support network. And I can empathize with that. And I know that there are other people driving to and from work all the time that feel the way I felt. What if what if I just went right off the road? What if another car came and got me and I wouldn't have to deal with this thing? And I just hope just once that the city of Boise's flag, like someone will see that and know that they are not alone, that there are people here that will support them, wrap their arms around them, and let them know that choosing to live and choosing to live authentically is something that you can do in the city of Boise. Every day, we're in a fight against erasure, whether it's clawing back civil rights progress, whether it's just even acknowledging the existence of gay and trans people in public society. And the city of Boise is not going to be a party to that erasure. And that's what the pride flag represents to me. And it's why I've sponsored this resolution to memorialize it today. And I would just also add, a lot of folks are here for and against the pride flag, but the legislation attempts to be neutral on messaging. And we think about all the other different messages that we exclude, important things that we don't want our government to be neutral on when we go after one specific flag. Just this past month, Councilmember Stead and I raised an organ donation awareness flag. And that and so many other messages are important things that we want to advocate for because they affect people that we love very, very closely. And I would just ask you to consider that and what kind of messages you're willing to exclude from public spaces, assuming new legislation advances. So I just thank everybody for coming out tonight for or against, and thank you for being respectful here tonight. And I love this city and I love you all. And I even have engaged, even though I'm the sponsor of this, I made phone calls today, engaged with those folks and gave feedback to the folks who were opposed to this. And I welcome your involvement. And I would echo Councilmember Willett's comments. I think we had 0 people at our budget hearing last year. So we would welcome you again. And thank you for your time tonight.
Well, thank you. Before the council votes on resolutions. I don't vote unless there's a tie. But before the council votes, I just wanted to say a couple things. First off, a couple things before the vote to explain the proclamation, and then I'll add some more to that. But on April 28th, I signed an official proclamation that retroactively established 3 flags as official Boise flags. The blue flag, the one we love, with a monochrome image of the Capitol building and the words Boise City of Trees. The rainbow flag, commonly referred to as a pride flag, and the flag that represents and gives voice to the fact that we are a welcoming city, and a flag honoring National Donate Life Month. The day at which, as Colin just mentioned, the raising of it, and we had quite a few residents of our community that were there because of the gift of organ donors. I myself learned so much on the plaza that day. So the proclamation has the legal effect of making the flags comply with HB 96. And I'd say this, we are changing the system because we must. Because in order for us to continue to use the story and remind all of us as a city who we are and to give voice to those values, we must change the system. And that includes adding additional flags to our list of official flags in the city of Boise. The resolution acknowledges and supports the proclamation, which is already made official. So tonight, this resolution acknowledges and supports that action that I took last week. First off, we don't agree with the bill, but the bill's a bill. But we don't agree that it's valid or enforceable. But we believe that this action, the proclamation that I did retroactively and the action today, has us in compliance with the law. And now, I have to thank all of you. For those of you that love the American flag as much as I do, for those of you that are here because you know what that flag says, that we have been flying for a decade. I appreciate all of you for being here. The feedback we have gotten since we ventured into this space has been overwhelming from local Boiseans in support of this, because we know that that's not just a flag. We know it says who we are, and we know that this bill was about just one flag. We have 3 official flags in the city in response to the bill, but most importantly, because that action demonstrates who we are, the values we hold, our commitment to those seen and unseen, out and not, that you are safe, welcome, and wanted here, that we are a city that is safe and welcoming for everyone, and will continue to fly the flags at City Hall that we have always flown. So thank you. And clerk, I'll ask you to call the roll. Again, I appreciate it, but remember I said silence. No, we don't clap. We don't do the thing. So thank you all very much. Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead. Willet.
No.
Corliss,
Absolutely.
or Halliburton.
Yes.
5 in favor, 1 opposed, motion carries.
All right, thank you. The motion passes. We will take a 5-minute recess so people can head about your evenings if you'd like. Meeting over again. We are going to move into the reading of ordinances. We can just start.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on first reading be read by number and title only and filed for the second reading calendar.
Without objection.
ORD 16-25, an ordinance CAR 24-00006 for property located at 1511 to 1519 South Londoner Ave, 405 to 517 West Highland Street, and parcel R 5315010250, Boise, Idaho 83706, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change classification of real property, particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance and adjacent rights of way, from R-1C, residential traditional, to R-2, residential compact, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date.
Thank you. And now we'll move into third reading.
Madam Mayor, I move that further reading of ORD 1525 be dispensed with and the record reflect they have been read the third time in full.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries. ORD 15-25, an ordinance CAR 24-14 for property located at 10100 West Overland Road, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property, particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance and adjacent rights of way, from R-2/DA, residential compacted development agreement, to MX-2/DA, mixed use general with development agreement, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date.
Madam Mayor, I move that ORD 15-25 be approved.
Second.
We have a motion, second, clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right, we are now going to move into subdivisions. So we've got quite a few. I think these will be relatively quick. What I'll do is when we start, I'll just check and see if the applicant's here and we'll figure out if you're in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report. And if you are, it'll probably be super simple. The first ones, we've got David Mosier for staff and Rodney Evans. Ben, I didn't see Ben. Ben, are you? Oh, Jillian? Oh, filling in for Ben. Leslie, great. Okay, so Leslie is here for Rodney Evans. We don't expect. Is the Sunset Neighborhood Association here? Online? Okay. Anybody here to testify on this one? Great. Go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council. The applicant is requesting a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 4 buildable lots located at 2939 West Hill Road on 0.37 acres in an R1C zone. And as seen here, the surrounding neighborhood consists predominantly of detached single-family homes adjacent to the site. The subject property is located about a half a mile north or southeast of Hill Road and 36th Street Neighborhood Activity Center, and the Boise City Canal runs along the western rear side of the property. This slide shows the preliminary plat for the Girard subdivision, which is a residential subdivision comprised of 4 buildable lots. And as proposed, all the lots will meet the dimensional standards of the R1C zone. The minimum lot size of the zone is 3,500 square feet, and the proposed lots will range from 3,505 to 5,315 square feet in size. And the applicant is proposing to subdivide the existing vacant lot to construct 4 attached townhomes as paired townhome units. Hill Road is currently improved with a 5-foot wide detached sidewalk abutting the site, and the applicant is proposing to replace the existing attached sidewalk with a 10-foot wide detached sidewalk and 10-foot wide landscape buffer along Hill Road. The proposed townhomes will take access from a shared drive with one access point onto Hill Road, and the shared driveway will function as a frontage road since it is set back 30 feet from the street. The townhome footprints shown here are conceptual, and each townhome will be required to comply with specific design standards as required by the development code. The planning team and the Planning and Zoning Commission find the preliminary plat complies with required findings and recommends approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for David? Are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? Okay, I'll have the record reflect that the applicant's in agreement, so no need to testify. Alrighty, want to confirm nobody is here to testify on this online? Right. I'll close this public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of SUB 24-17, a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision located at 2939 West Hill Road, comprised of 4 buildable lots on 0.37 acres of an R1C zone.
Second.
We have a motion and second discussion.
Madam Mayor, just wanted to say thank you to the developer. This is great infill. The work with the sidewalk, Hill Road's busier and busier and busier. And so thanks for working with our city staff to get this nailed down. I think it's going to be a great addition to this area of town, which I live very close to. So thank you.
Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willis,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Great. Next up, we've got the Raybird Johnson subdivision. David's still with us. I see Scott over here. You're here for this one. Neighborhood Association? Public? Anybody online? Right, same drill. Right, go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council. The applicant requests approval of a preliminary and final plat for an industrial subdivision comprised of 5 buildable lots on 5.81 acres in an I1 zone. And as seen here, the subject property is located on the north side of Joplin Road, east of the West Boise Water Renewal Facility. The properties to the east and west are currently located in Ada County and within the area of impact. There is a single-family home on the property to the southwest of the site, and other uses in the area are largely industrial. There is an existing building on the property adjacent to Joplin Road, which is occupied by a boarding kennel. This slide shows the final plat and the site plan as approved by the design review. In summary, the applicant is requesting a new preliminary and final plat approval for the 5-lot industrial subdivision. The proposed lots will meet the dimensional standards of the I1 zone, and the applicant is requesting a waiver from the street frontage standards since the 4 back lots will not have street frontage. Access to Joplin Road will be provided by a private service drive. In addition, the subject property is bisected by the Thurman Mill irrigation canal. The subject property contains a phased industrial development comprised of 5 new multi-tenant industrial buildings, 1 existing building along Joplin Road. This phase development was approved by design review back in 2021. The first phase of the development includes the construction of 2 multi-tenant industrial buildings along the west side of the property, and the remaining industrial buildings on lots 3 and 4 will be constructed as later phases. In addition, no changes to the design review approved site and landscape plan is proposed, and building designs are also will not change with this project. A recommended condition of approval will require Joplin Road be improved with curb gutter, 5-foot attached sidewalk. In addition, to accommodate the future pathway through this area, a 14-foot wide public pathway easement will be reported along the front of the property. The subdivision is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, which contains various industrial uses, and the planning team and the Planning and Zoning Commission find the preliminary and final plat application complies with the required findings and recommend approval. Thank you.
Questions for David?
Madam Mayor, but can you bring the map up again about where this is located? I want to see where it is in relationship to our water treatment facility. Just
Water
for my-
treatment
for my
facility,
own
Madam
benefit.
Mayor, members of council, is just right about here,
Okay,
just off the map.
thank you.
Anything further? All right, Scott, are you in agreement with terms and conditions? We will have that reflected in the record. And with that, I'll close this one and take a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of SUB 24-53, a preliminary and final plat for an industrial subdivision located at 11230 West Joplin Road on 5.181 acres in an I-1 industrial light zone.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, clerk?
Madam Mayor, if I could, just want to again say thank you for the developer working with that public pathway easement. This is a really interesting part of town and a very underutilized part of town. And so this is the exact kind of development I think that we're looking to see in sort of a complex area, but working with our staff to also get that public pathway, some sidewalk improvements right there is helpful to a lot of the city goals. So thank you for the work on that, Scott.
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willet,
Yes,
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
And next up, David again. So we have somebody else after this. Okay. Okay. The Monoplace subdivision, I see Amy Algeyer is the applicant and you are here. We don't expect the Neighborhood Association of Central Rim here. Anybody here to testify on this one? Online? Great.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council. The applicant is requesting approval of a preliminary and final plat for residential subdivision comprised of 4 buildable lots on 0.43 acres in an R1C zone located at 4722 West Holmes Street. And as seen here, the subject property is located on the north side of Holmes Street, which is a narrow right-of-way that connects Orchard to the west and Garden Street to the east. The adjacent residential neighborhood is primarily comprised of detached single-family homes. In addition, there is a church adjacent to the east of the site, and commercial properties are located to the west along Orchard Street. This slide shows the final plat and the landscape plat for the proposed 4-lot residential subdivision. The lots comply with the minimal dimensional standards of the R1C zone in terms of lot size and width. In addition, the applicant will install a 5-foot wide detached sidewalk with a 10-foot landscape buffer for about 100 feet of the street frontage along Holmes Street. And then the sidewalk will then shift to a 5-foot wide attached sidewalk for the remaining 25 feet on the east side in order to save an existing 24-inch caliper tree, which is located along the property line. A condition of approval will require that the detached sidewalk be extended along the entire stretch of Holmes Street if the tree cannot be saved. The project will also comply with the tree mitigation requirements of the development code, which includes the planting of 5 deciduous trees for a total of 14 caliper inches. And in summary, the project complies with all the required development code standards as stated in the project report. The subdivision is consistent with the surrounding area, which contains residential uses, and the planning team finds and the Planning and Zoning Commission find the preliminary and final plat application complies with the required findings and recommend approval. Thank you.
Alrighty. Are you in agreement with terms and conditions of the report? Great. We will put that into the record. Just confirming nobody's here for this one. All right. We'll go ahead and close the hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of SUB 25-9, a preliminary and final plat for a residential subdivision located at 4722 West Holmes Street, comprised of 4 buildable, excuse me?
All right, I was just jumping the gun on the second.
Okay.
Please continue.
472 West Holmes Street, 4722 West Holmes Street, comprised of 4 buildable lots on 0.43 acres in an R1C residential traditional zone.
Second.
Motion a second.
Madam Mayor, I got something for this one too. Again, thanks to the developer, but this one, there was a meeting that we had maybe a year ago, same area of town. We had a sidewalk that was going to take out some trees and there was a big discussion. One of the things that I asked city staff to do was to explore ways to be flexible so that we could get the best of both worlds, get our sidewalks where we want them, detached when we can, but not at the stake of taking down a large tree that has a lot of value to the neighborhood. And so I just want to say thank you to the staff for that sort of flexibility. That's the exact kind of thing that I know that I'm looking for on these types of applications. How can we do what's best for the neighbors by being flexible with some of our rules and our requirements when it fits? So great job.
Madam Mayor, I'll just add that I think this is a great infill project. Again, we've got a couple of them tonight, but it really fits with the neighborhood. It takes advantage of everything that we like to see and encourage with preserving trees if possible, adding trees where we can't, those detached sidewalks, et cetera. So I'm excited to see this addition to the neighborhood.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, I don't want to belabor the point, but I do appreciate this infill project, and for another reason too, because it provides a need for housing and a housing shortage. Also with this, when we have these great infill projects within existing neighborhoods, they create more housing options without the need for installing costly infrastructure and expansion. So it's a great area of town. It's a great infill project, and I'm glad this is forward tonight.
All right, clerk.
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right, now we've got the Troya Place subdivision. Matthew Dennis presenting. Troy Adams, the applicant.
Madam Mayor, the applicant is online.
Okay, great. Troy, I'll see if you're in agreement with terms and conditions when we get to that point. Is anybody online or here to testify from a neighborhood association or from the public? All righty.
Good evening and thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. As you said, the item before you is a preliminary and final plat for the residential subdivision comprised of 2 buildable lots located at 5605 West Fremont Street on 0.23 acres in an R1C residential traditional zone. The proposed lots comply with the dimensional standards of the R1C zone. Each home will be accessed via a single driveway from Fremont Street. This property currently contains a single-family house that's planned to be retained and does not contain street improvements. A condition of approval for this subdivision requires the property to be improved with detached sidewalk along its west side, adjacent to Marcus Street, and attached sidewalk along its northern side, adjacent to Fremont Street. This will allow an existing tree to be retained on site and will align with the existing sidewalk network along Fremont Street. In conclusion, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of the preliminary and final plat, and I will stand for any questions.
Any questions? All right, I'll ask Troy Adams. Are you in agreement with terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you. Confirming nobody's here for this, I will close the hearing.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of SUB 24-46, a preliminary and final plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 2 buildable lots on 0.23 acres located at 5605 West Fremont Street in an R1C zone.
Second.
Discussion? Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Yeah, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Make just a quick comment. Again, this is another example of a really great infill project, and I appreciate the developer being able to keep the house there on site while being able to provide another housing unit to help meet our housing goals. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last item of subdivisions, Harris Ranch Lot SE10 subdivision. Matthew's back with us. Claire Smarta. Hi, Claire. The applicant. We don't expect Barber Valley, Gary Beasy. I didn't see Gary online. Anybody here to testify on this? Great.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The item before you is a preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 18 buildable and 1 common lot located at 4433 East Haystack Street on 1.37 acres in the SP01 Harris Ranch Specific Plan Zone. The proposed subdivision, shown here on the right, complies with the dimensional standards and approval criteria of the Development Code as well as the Harris Ranch Specific Plan for Block SE10 utilizing Block Prototype 19C, shown here on the left. The proposal has received approval from the Harris Ranch Review Board and will require a design review application prior to the submission of building permits. As was described within the project memo, this subdivision contains a temporary name, Harris Ranch Lot SE10 Subdivision, which will be revised during the submission of the subsequent final plat application. Additionally, since the Planning and Zoning Commission's hearing, the preliminary plat was slightly modified by increasing the size of each buildable lot by about 44 square feet and reducing the common lot by approximately 1,000 square feet. The applicant also removed the lines which delineated the floodplain since this has received approval of a LOMAR permit through FEMA. In conclusion, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval of the preliminary, and I will stand for any questions.
Questions? All right, I'll ask if you're in agreement with terms and conditions of the staff report. All right, the record will reflect that. I want to confirm nobody's here for this one. And I close the hearing. Thanks.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of SUB 25-1 preliminary plat for a residential subdivision comprised of 18 buildable and 1 common lot located at 4433 East Haystack Street on 1.37 acres in the SPO1 FPO Harris Ranch Specific Plan Zone.
Second.
Discussion? All right, clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
All right, and for this last item, we are going to take a motion to defer, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I move that we defer action on CPA 22-3 and CAR 22-48 until
May 20th.
I believe our noon meeting on May 20th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Clerk?
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead,
Yes.
Willetts,
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes, but I'm seeing some heads shaking.
I knew it. I knew it. We canceled that meeting.
It's just full figure.
Okay. Madam Mayor, if I could amend the motion, I ask unanimous consent to amend the motion to defer this subject to
Later.
subject to a date set by staff no later than 45 days from today.
I'll support that as the seconder.
All right. I think we're starting voting over again.
Morales,
Yes.
Nash,
Yes.
Stead.
Yeah.
Willetts.
Yes.
Corliss,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.